Hi my frogs, welcome back to my channel, and right now we'll be reading my second and Christmas one-shot entitled From Now On Our Troubles Will Be Miles Away by Autumn Pumpkin on AO3. This fic is about 2,062 words long and is a one-shot. But it is rated general audiences and no archive warnings apply. And categories: female-female relationship and male-male relationship. From now on, our troubles will be miles away, by Autumn Pumpkin. Read by FrogFan14. Snow arrived quickly that year, not the dramatic kind that shut the city down, or demanded attention, but a steady fall that softened Mustafa until even its sharpest edges seemed kinder. It gathered on the railings and rooftops, dusted the tops of street signs, and settled into the seams of the city, like it had always belonged there. From the apartment windows, the city lights blurred into warm halos, traffic reduced to a distant murmur that felt more like reassurance than noise. Fairy lights traced the edges of the ceiling, looping gently around the door frames and shelves. The Christmas tree stood near the window, tall and faintly crooked, decorated with a mismatched collection of ornaments that told a story without trying to. Paper stars from years ago, a chipped glass bauble that Hisashi refused to replace because Nemuri liked that one. A small angel with uneven wings, handmade and carefully repaired, hanging slightly lower than the rest. A record spun softly in the corner. Frank Sinatra's voice drifted through the room, warm and steady. Oda stood near the tree, adjusting one of the lights where it had slipped loose. He stepped back, head tilted slightly, assessing it with the same seriousness he had once reserved for patrol routes and molesting victims. The light blinked once more, then steadied. "Fixed," he murmured, satisfied. "You rearranged the entire left side," Hisashi said from behind him. Amusement laced through his voice. "It was unbalanced." Hisashi laughed softly and stepped closer, hands settling at Shota's hips. He rested his chin briefly against Ota's shoulder. Shota leaned back into him without thinking, inhaling the familiar scent of his shampoo. "Everything about Christmas is unbalanced," Hisashi said. "That's the point." Shota huffed, but did not move away. "You say that every year." "And every year I'm right." The kitchen behind him hummed with a quiet preparation. Something sweet baked in the oven, the scent of citrus peel and sugar lingering in the air. A pot simmered gently on the stove, steam fogging the nearby window, just enough that someone had drawn a smiley face into it earlier, and forgotten to wipe it away. Eri sat cross-legged on the floor near the coffee table, carefully tying a ribbon around a wrapped gift. She was taller now, unmistakably a teenager. Her movement and surer and more deliberate. She frowned slightly as the bow slipped her skin. "Hold this," he said. Hitoshi, seated opposite her, leaned down forward and caught the paper right before it shifted. Then he had shed his jacket somewhere along the way, and was now in a soft jumper that looked suspiciously like one of Hisashi's old ones. His hair fell into his eyes as he concentrated. "You're pulling it too tight," he said quietly. "It needs to stay," Eri insisted. Hitoshi adjusted the ribbon with careful fingers, easing it into place rather than fighting it. "It will, trust me." She watched him for a second, then smiled. "You're good at this," he snorted softly. "I raised myself." Eri laughed. "Nuh-uh. Dad and Papa adopted you when you were like 11. That totally counts." On the couch, Shoto's claimed his place hours ago, mug cupped between his hands. He watched them with the faintest smile, eyes soft. When Hitoshi drifted back towards him, he shifted slightly, their shoulders brushing. "You're warm," Shoto mumbled. "You're always cold," Hitoshi replied. Shoto nudged closer, relaxing his shoulder properly against Hitoshi's this time. Hitoshi exhaled, then leaned back into him, posture loosening as they settled together. The doorbell rang. Hisashi straightened up immediately, grin already forming. That'll be them! The cold air slipped briefly into the apartment as the door opened, chased quickly by the warmth and laughter of Izuku. Izuku stepped inside first, snow caught on his curls. His cheeks flushed from the cold. Katsuki followed close behind, already shrugging off his coat, expression set into its usual scowl that did not quite reach his eyes. Their hands brushed as they kicked off their shoes. Shota noticed the rings immediately. Simple, identical bands, catching the light as Izuku pulled off his gloves. Hisashi noticed a second later. Eri gasped, hands flying into her mouth. Hitoshi blinked, then smiled despite himself. Something soft breaking through. Shoto's eyes widened, his grip kept tightening briefly around his coffee mug. Hisashi stared at the rings for half a second longer than necessary, then his smile turned pointed. Oh, absolutely not, he said, stepping forward, pulling them both into a careful hug. Engaged? And you didn't call? Izuku laughed, flustered. We wanted to tell you in person. You had weeks, Hisashi said, pulling back, just enough to look at them, still smiling. Weeks, Izuku! I raised you better than this. Shota snorted quietly behind him. Katsuki sobbed. See, this is why we waited. They're already doing the disappointed parent thing. Hisashi gasped affectionately. We're not disappointed. You're totally disappointed, Katsuki said flatly. Shota stepped forward, resting his hand briefly on Izuku's shoulder. Congratulations, he said, voice calm and genuine. Katsuki met his eyes. Thanks. Izuku smiled between them, warm and a little overwhelmed. Almost immediately, Katsuki rolled up his sleeves. All right, where's the kitchen? Hisashi pointed without hesitation. Second left, don't rearrange everything. Katsuki was already moving. No promises. Shota watched him go, something faintly amused was settled in his expression. He's going to reorganize the whole counter, Shota said. Hisashi smiled fondly. Yeah. Katsuki moved like he had always belonged there, checking the stove, adjusting the heat, tasting the sauce without asking. Shota watched from the doorway, something warm settling behind his ribs. It reminded him unexpectedly of long afternoons at UA, Bakugo forcing vitamin tablets into unwilling hands, barking at people to eat their vegetables, single-handedly keeping the class from nutritional collapse through their sheer stubbornness. Shota smiled into his mug. The doorbell rang again, and again. Suyu and Uraraka arrived together, snow dusting their shoulders. Hands intertwined easily, then the rest of the class followed. One by one, voices filled the apartment, gently overlapping rather than competing. Snow slowly melted from coats, hung along the doorway, droplets collecting on the mat by the door. The kitchen lights stayed bright, reflecting off glassware and polished benches. Steam curled gently from the pots as Katsuki moved with sharp, competent efficiency. Shota watched him for a moment longer than necessary. Katsuki noticed immediately. What? He said, not looking up as he adjusted the frame. Nothing, Shota replied. You just always did this. Katsuki snorted. Someone has to. Hisashi leaned into the counter nearby, handing him a spoon. You bullied the entire class into eating citrus. It worked. It did. Shota agreed, a quiet smile tugging at his mouth. In the living room, Eri sat between Suyu and Uraraka on the couch, listening intently as they explained something animatedly with their hands. She nodded along, thoughtful, asking questions that made them both pause and grin at each other. You're scary smart, Uraraka said fondly. Eri shrugged, a little embarrassed. I just remember things. As the evening edged forward, Hisashi tapped the glass gently with a spoon. Not loud, just enough. Before dinner, he said, his voice warm. The room naturally quieted. People drifted closer without being asked. Hisashi moved towards the stall near the window, where a small candle sat beside an old photograph. Nomori was frozen in mid-lap in it, sunglasses crooked, hair caught by the wind, and she had turned too fast. Shota joined him without a word. Hisashi struck the match slowly, deliberately. The flame flared, then steadied as he tilted it towards the wick. "For Nomori," he said, smiling. "For Nomori," Shota echoed. The candle caught, light blooming, soft and sure. Dinner followed easily. People moved between rooms, plates passed hand to hand. In the kitchen, laughter rose and fell gently as gifts were exchanged early. Nothing extravagant, and just thoughtful things. A scarf unfolded and then immediately draped around someone's shoulders. A mug turned spoolily and careful in someone's hands. Izuku beamed as Katsuki accepted something, and with a gruff nod that meant everything. Shota stood near the counter when Izuku approached him again, a folder tucked under his arms. "Can I talk to you?" Izuku said softly. Shota nodded, and they stepped aside, not away, just into a quieter pocket of the room. Izuku handed him the folder. "Final paperwork," he said. "Hero work, teaching, everything's complete." Shota opened it softly. His name stared back at him. "Official and final. Dates, signatures." "So, that's it," he said. Izuku nodded. "You've given enough." Shota closed the folder. He didn't feel hollow, just finished. "Thank you," he said. Izuku smiled relieved. "I just wanted to bring it tonight. Felt right." Across the room, Hisashi caught Shota's eyes immediately, and reading him like he always did. Shota lifted the folder slightly. Hisashi smiled. Shota found himself on the couch beside Hisashi and Eri. He curled comfortably on the other side. Hitoshi seated on the floor, his back against Shoto's knees. Shoto's hand rested idly in Hitoshi's hair, absent and affectionate. The record crackled softly. "Someday soon, we'll all be together." Shota leaned into Hisashi's side, the folder resting forgotten on the table. Hisashi wrapped an arm around his shoulders, thumb brushing lightly along his sleeve. "You okay?" Hisashi murmured. "Yeah," Shota said honestly. "I really am." Hisashi kissed his temple, unhurried. Outside, the snow continued to fall. The night thinned out slowly. No one rushed to leave. People lingered in doorways, finishing stories they had already told once. Hugging again, because it felt right. The snow outside kept falling, light and patient. The city muffled beneath it. Sue and Uraraka were the first to go. Scarves looped carefully, the hands still linked as they stepped into the cold. They waved from the stairwell, smile soft and tired in the best way. One by one, the others followed. Bakugo pulled Izuku's scarf tighter before they left, muttering something under his breath that made Izuku laugh. Shota lingered at the door with Hitoshi, reluctantly in a way that felt fond rather than uncertain. "You're staying," Shota reminded him mildly. Shoto nodded. "I know." Eri hugged everyone good night. Her arms were warm and sure around each of them. She hugged Shota. She held on a little longer, pressing her cheek against his chest. "Thank you," she said quietly. Shota rested his hand on her back. "Always." When the door finally closed for the last time, the apartment exhaled. Plates were stacked, glasses rinsed and set to dry, wrapping paper gathered into a neat pile rather than thrown away immediately. In the living room, Eri had already curled up on the couch, half asleep beneath the blanket, a phone abandoned in her hand. Hitoshi gently lifted it from her fingers and set it on the table. "I'll take her," he murmured. Shota nodded. "Thanks." Hitoshi moved carefully, waking her just enough to guide her down the hall. Shota followed quietly. hand hovering at Hitoshi's back out of habit more than necessity. The doors to their rooms closed softly. Hisashi came up behind Shota, slipping his arms around his waist, resting his chin on his shoulder like he had done earlier that evening. He stood there together until the record reached the end, the needle lifting with a faint click. Hisashi reached over to turn it off, plunging the room into a deeper quiet. They blew out the candle together. In the bedroom, the air was cool and clean. Shota changed slowly, the day setting into his bones, now that he had nowhere else to go. Hisashi moved around him, the same unhurried care, and slipped into bed beside him without ceremony. Hisashi turned to his side, facing Shota, one hand resting slightly against his chest. Shota mirrored him. Their foreheads touched briefly before he settled closer, fitting himself into the space that had always been his. You know, Hisashi murmured, voice barely above a breath. There were years I didn't think we'd get this. Shota closed his eyes. I know. But here we are, Hisashi said, smiling. Shota slid his hand over Hisashi's fingers, threading together. I'm not going anywhere. Hisashi smiled softly and certain, and pressed a gentle kiss to Shota's forehead. Good, because I like this life. Shota huffed quietly. Me too. Outside, the snow continued to fall, light and endless. Inside, the apartment rested, warm and full, holding the shape of everyone who had passed through it that night. Christmas passed quietly around them. Then when morning came, it would still be there. Okay, everyone, so that was us. From now on, our troubles will be miles away. Personally, I think this is a really cool fic, and again, as always, I'll leave a links to the fic in the description, along with the link to the thumbnail. You know, and I just you know what to do, guys. I really recommend to go over and read the original fic on AO3. Okay, because again, I know for a fact I messed up. But yeah, that's it. And just remember, go over there and leave comments and kudos. Have a Merry Christmas, or Happy New Year's, or whatever holiday that you celebrate. Just Happy Holidays.